Growing up as a member of the royal family or becoming a part of the royal family is pretty difficult. With being in the spotlight from the day you're born to having every move scrutinized by the world, it's pretty hard to have a normal life, as we've seen with Princess Diana and now Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Queen Elizabeth has 4 children: Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, and 1 daughter, Princess Anne. Out of all 4 of her children, Princess Anne had one of the hardest lives. Clearly, she didn't like the royal life and has tried to remove herself from the spotlight over the years. So that leads us to wonder, how exactly has the royal life ruined Queen Elizabeth's only daughter? Absent parents. On August 15, 1950, Queen Elizabeth's second child, Princess Anne, was born. While Queen Elizabeth wasn't crowned as queen until 1953, she still had plenty of royal responsibilities to deal with. Once she became queen, her duties only increased. When your mother is the literal Queen of England, nothing in your life is going to be normal. Having so many duties as a queen means that they come first rather than taking care of your own children. And as a result, many times, her kids had to come second to her royal duties. It's no secret that the royal kids have a messy relationship with their parents, and it's mostly because of the less affection they receive growing up from their parents. Royal children are raised by their live-in nannies. They are 24/7 and often take care of the children, especially when they cry in the middle of the night, and basically raise them themselves. This often makes a strained relationship later in life, knowing that they weren't actually raised by their mothers. Not to mention, there are tons of rules that kids have to follow that would make them a little bit resentful to their parents. Everything from how they can act in public to what they can wear, which can cause a lot of these royal children to hate royal life and the duties that come with it. With almost absent parents and strict royal rules to follow, Princess Anne really started hating the royal life and was pretty vocal about it growing up. Bad princess. Growing up, Princess Anne and the press didn't really have a good relationship. The press would paint Princess Anne in a bad light and gave her a bad image as a princess with a poor attitude. In fact, the press nicknamed Princess Anne her royal rudeness. In her late teens and early 20s, the press accused her of having a temper. While visiting the United States with Prince Charles in 1970, they claimed Prince Charles to be the perfect royal, while Princess Anne was not. She refused to smile for photos and was rude to them. An article from the New York Times made a note about her poor attitude, saying, "From the moment she stepped onto the lawn and commented, 'I didn't know they made so many cameras,' she made no effort to conceal a mood of incredulity and vague discomfort." Even in recent years, the press had called her miserable and cold. When her father, Prince Philip, was involved in a car accident in 2019, the press asked Princess Anne about the crash. She replied, "I've no idea. You know where I am, the same place as you." The press claimed her reaction wasn't one of a worried daughter and accused her of having a poor attitude yet again. In fact, she once shouted at a reporter that she didn't ask to be a princess. Brothers come first. Even though Princess Anne was Queen Elizabeth's second child, she's not second in line for anything, as her brothers almost always have to come first. Back when Princess Anne was born, it was a time when men automatically went in front of her in terms of succession to the crown. This is simply because she was a woman despite being the queen's second child. Currently, Princess Anne is 15th in line to the throne, which is a very long ways away considering she was the queen's second child. Her brother, Prince Charles, is first, followed by Prince William and his 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Of course, there's Prince Harry, and then his son Archie and daughter Lilibet. Then there's Prince Andrew, her brother, and his 2 daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and then Princess Eugenie's son, August. Finally, there's her 3rd brother, Prince Edward, followed by his 2 children, James, Viscount Severn, and Lady Louise. After all that, then Prince Anne would be able to finally take the throne, which as some say is unfair. Almost kidnapped. There was once a terrifying moment in Princess Anne's life that left her with years-long trauma. On March 20th, 1974, there was an attempt to kidnap Princess Anne. After attending an event with her husband, a man stopped their limo. He attempted to kidnap the princess while holding 2 handguns. Luckily, with some quick thinking from the princess herself, she was able to stand up to the gunman and get away from him. Being the stubborn woman that she is, she stood her ground when the kidnapper told her to get out of the car. She said, "It was all so infuriating. I kept saying I didn't want to get out of the car and I was not going to get out of the car. I nearly lost my temper with him, but I knew that if I did, I should hit him and he would shoot me." While security members were shot while trying to protect Princess Anne and her husband, she proved that she didn't need him. She managed to open the door on the opposite side of the car and pushed herself backward. Her kidnapper quickly tried to run to the side of the vehicle to go get her, but she tricked him, pulling the door shut instead and locking him out on both sides. The kidnapper knew he had no choice but to run, where he was later captured by police. Marriage scandal. Like anyone else in the public eye, Princess Anne couldn't escape a scandal, and this one was with her marriage. Princess Anne met her first husband, Captain Mark Phillips, in 1968, as they bonded over being on Britain's Olympic equestrian team. The two fell for each other and eventually married in 1973. Together, they had 2 children, Peter and Zara. Their marriage was filled with scandals. They both had affairs with other people throughout their marriage, her husband even fathering a secret child out of wedlock. Their marriage came to an end in 1992. Just a few months after their divorce was finalized, Princess Anne married her second husband, Commander Timothy Lawrence, the Queen's equerry. Princess Anne had an affair with him while she was still married to her first husband and caused a huge scandal when tabloids found love letters sent between the two while the princess was still married. Princess Anne also had another affair that caused quite the love quadrangle. This one was with Andrew Parker Bowles. If his name sounds familiar to you, you're right, as he was the husband of none other than Camilla Parker Bowles, Prince Charles's current wife. We all remember how Prince Charles cheated on everyone's favorite princess, Diana. The woman he was with was Camilla Parker Bowles, whom he later married after Princess Diana's death. Well, to put it bluntly, Princess Anne had an affair with Camilla's husband, Andrew, which introduced Charles and Camilla. Equestrian accident. Growing up, the only thing that really made the princess happy was her love for horses. Princess Anne enjoyed riding horses and even participated in equestrian competitions. She was so good at competing that there were talks of her joining the Olympic team, but before she could do so, she had a horrible accident where she ended up with a hairline fracture on her vertebrae. After a lot of rehab and hard work, she was able to make the 1976 team, but the injury and the pressure of competing took a toll on her, as she has no memory of even competing at the games. When she was competing in an event, she took another fall off of her horse. Thankfully, because it wasn't as bad as the first fall that really injured her, she was able to get back up and finish her event. Looking back on it though, it was a terrifying experience. She doesn't remember anything after falling, nor why she fell in the first place. Between the mounting pressure and being a royal with the spotlight on her, that most likely had something to do with it. She's overlooked. Unfortunately, when you're 15th in line for the crown and not in the public eye as much as your brothers, you're often overlooked by the public. When she was much younger, she was constantly in the public eye. But these days, while she still participates in royal activities, she's not nearly as talked about as her brother Prince Charles and all of his children that are next in line for the throne. Despite that, Princess Anne is the hardest working royal, and she's involved with dozens of charities and appears in over 100 events every year. Unfortunately, because of her brothers before her and their children, she kind of gets swept under the rug. Growing up as a royal definitely isn't an easy thing to do. Your childhood isn't the same as everyone else's, and there's no shot at any sort of private life. Growing up, Princess Anne clearly didn't want to be born a princess and enjoyed doing things her way. Although being a royal did ruin certain aspects of her life, Princess Anne did make the best of it. Looking back at Princess Anne's life, what do you think? Do you think it was the royal life that ultimately changed her? How do you think she handled things? Would you do the same? Let me know what you think in the comments.